Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Andrew Mighty. I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT, a member of the Careers Organizing Committee for this year's Sports Analytics Conference. I'd like to introduce our next panel, the FanDuel Executive Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Q&A with Amy Howe, CEO, Javon Connie, Director of Strategic Partnerships, and Juliet Gorson, Data Science, and then our moderator is going to be Lisa Kearney, host of More Ways to Win by FanDuel. So please welcome our new panelists.
Well done. Well done. Thank you so much. What a nice welcome. We are thrilled to be here. What a weekend. I mean, this powerful, impactful weekend that's going to just, it's going to grow. It's got legs to go a lot of ways and make a lot of moves that we need. So this panel here, obviously we're very excited to be here and be a part of this conversation, and it's supremely important to continue to push this forward and continue to interject energy into this initiative. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here and taking the time. We want to make sure that you all have a voice as well. So if we're having a conversation, something comes up, you want to know more about something, please raise your hand. There are two runners with microphones, so they will be sure to get to you. We want this to be a free-flowing conversation, so please feel free to jump in. It's not just us up here, but we are all part of this together. So again, Amy, Juliet, Javon, I'm very excited to be here with you all. And I'm going to turn it over to you because we just want to know more about you all, and I think that's the best place to start the conversation. So Amy, get us going.
All right. Amy Howe, 2 years ago right now, I was on one of these stages at the conference, and I was the global COO of Ticketmaster. So in the spirit of never let a crisis go to waste, I decided to switch careers and jobs in the middle of the pandemic. So I started out as president and stepped into the CEO role October of last year. On a personal note, my husband and I have three amazing boys. I have a almost 16-year-old, and he's definitely a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old. They are all little athletes, and I'm now finally at that point in my career where my kids are like, "That's a really cool job, Mom." I took them to the Super Bowl. That was actually kind of fun. So I'll talk more about my kids throughout the panel. So.
Hi, everybody. I'm Juliet. I'm a data scientist on the sports modeling innovation team. So 2 years ago, I was also not at FanDuel. I was a professor of biology at Hofstra University on Long Island, where I studied venomous marine snails. So I could talk about snails all day. If you have questions, you can ask me afterwards.
But top that, by the way.
But so, FanDuel made it a really easy transition to leave academia, come into industry, leave studying big data, DNA, RNA, and start studying sports data. And my specific role is building models that are powering some of the lines that you see on the sports book. And I specifically concentrate on NHL, so building an NHL simulation, a play-by-play NHL simulation. So I love that 8:30 talk this morning about NHL data analytics, because the field's really growing.
Hey everyone, Javon Coney. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, south side of Chicago, to be more specific. I went on to attend the University of Colorado, where I played Division I basketball for 4 years. Ended up graduating with a degree in political science. From there, I had the opportunity to go work for the Obama administration at the White House, where I was part of the Office of Scheduling in Advance that basically would oversee and help coordinate, his daily task. And so I was part of a team that would work with White House Secret Service and communications to, help coordinate the logistics of his domestic and international travel. And from there, I was able to kind of parlay that into a special assistant role with former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, where it was kind of a personal aid role that would travel with him and help him on his daily needs. And I did that for about 6.5 years. I helped him with a variety of different things each and every day. And then was looking to transition out of politics and was offered this position at FanDuel, where I currently serve as Director of Strategic Partnerships. And basically, I help oversee all of our league and team relationships, but also some broader business development opportunities as well.
Who do you think is going to win March Madness?
We can get to that as well. So we'll let you marinate on that for a minute. We are here to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have unique and dynamic individuals here on this stage. So please take advantage of all that they have to offer today. And I'm just going to dive right in because wildly different paths, all three of you coming to this point in your career. And I really want to look back and have you reflect. Is there any one person in particular at any moment in your career that really empowered you to help get through particular obstacles that you look back and you're like, that was a really critical turning point for me? Amy, I'll just have you kick that one off too. Go for it.
So listen, I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of advocates in my career. I'll come back to that in a minute. But I would say, for me, I grew up in, I came from consulting. I spent the better part of 15 years at McKinsey. And one of the things, I think there's some consultants in this room, many in fact, or former consultants. And what equipped me for working effectively in corporate America in male-dominated industries was a philosophical belief around how you manage talent, right? The notion of true apprenticeship, the idea of meritocracy. You don't have to sit in a role for a certain period of time. It's really about who deserves to be promoted. And probably most importantly, finding your voice. For those who have heard me speak many times, I always talk about obligation to dissent, which is what the firm talks about. And because I was raised that way at McKinsey, when I stepped into corporate America, I felt like I was very well equipped with the tools. To answer your direct question, though, there were many I had, and I make this distinction between advocates and mentors. I have lots of mentors, right, there's lots of people that I can pick up the phone and vent to or ask advice. In fact, yesterday at the Multiplier Summit, which had 80 or 100 pretty senior executive women, we were talking about the notion of building your pack. So I have a very large pack at this point in my career, but the individuals who, if I look back and I attribute my success to, or there's one gentleman in particular who is now the CEO of Reckitt Benckiser over in the UK. And without him, I never would have made partner at McKinsey. And he was the individual that they give you the tough feedback that you don't necessarily want to hear, but you know you have to hear. He and I would sometimes have some knockdown, drag-out fights too.
That dialogue creates a stronger relationship and more respect and that mutual respect. And at that point, you're like, okay, now I know I can come to you now. Yeah. And we talked yesterday in the conference about, building that core group of allies and extending men and women. You need your allies and you need your group. So,
as Marie Donoghue said yesterday, she calls it her kitchen cabinet.
Yes. Because everybody has a different purpose. That's great. Juliet, what about you?
So I've been really fortunate. I would say parents have been a huge support. Ever since I was very young, I had a lot of friends that would go to like camp for the summer. At one point I said, I want to do research somewhere random. My parents said, how about Costa Rica? You love sea turtles. I said, more random. People have been to Costa Rica. So at 16, I flew to Madagascar by myself to study the fossa, which probably a lot of you have never even heard of. They eat lemurs. So my parents had always supported me. I decided to play rugby in college. My parents were like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's okay, I'm strong, I got this. And then I decided to pursue a PhD in marine biology, computational biology, where I studied venomous snails. And of course, most people have never heard of venomous snails. Half my family is in France, so when I told my grandparents I study snails, they said, excellent, escargot. I said, not those kinds of snails, a different type of snail. So I've had support from family. They understood that I marched to the beat of my own drum. I kind of wanted to take this different path, and it was exceptional to have. And also not only my family, my friends as well. They kind of knew. They were like, Juliet's just going to do her own thing. Let her do it. And I remember when I kind of decided, I think it's time to leave academia. The university I was at wasn't really supporting computational biology, even though it's the way of the future. And I was like, I need to be in a data-driven field. And when I got offered the position at FanDual, I was thinking, is it weird? I've spent 7 years studying venomous snails. Is it weird for me to switch all of a sudden and start studying something like hockey? And my parents said, you've been good at a lot of things. You've always been good at a lot of things. You've had a lot of interests. You've never just been the snail girl. So it's okay for you to transition. If you're interested in sports, you've built that foundation in coding, you can transition over to FanDual. And it's been wonderful. So I'm really lucky. I would say like family has been like a really strong hold for me throughout this entire journey. And couldn't be happier here at FanDual. I don't think I'm going to be transitioning anywhere crazy anytime soon.
You're not going to go back to snails.
Not back to snails.
Well, we're
and
lucky to have you. We're keeping you. So tell your parents you found where you're going to be for the next
100%.
however many decades. Great story and great perspective. Javon, what about you?
Yeah, so as Amy said, I've had many in my life, but I'll talk about a few. So first, I would say it started, in college. My college coaches would always kind of push me to get outside of my comfort zone. Wasn't always easy. I was a preferred walk-on, so I really had to fight hard for any minute that I got on the floor, and taught me really how to persevere. And I think I'm 100% a better man for that today. And I would say Reggie Love too, who was a personal aide to President Obama for many years, and a close friend of his. Reggie is one of my closest friends, and was very instrumental in my opportunity at the White House, and somebody that I lean on for advice and guidance throughout my life. And then Mayor de Blasio, I would give credit to as well. He, getting a chance to kind of see the mayor of New York City and how he would run, the biggest city in the country and everything that entails. Throughout that experience, he would take times to what he would call, give me teachable moments and fatherly advice, and I always was appreciative when he would do that for me. And then lastly, I would say to my faith, which is a big part of anything that I do.
I want to lean into what you've started that conversation with, in that you're a walk-on basketball player. You're a walk-on basketball player. There are guys that come in full rides, and you're a starter right out of the gate, but that experience is a totally different one, and one that takes discipline and takes grit that we talk about a lot.
A lot of grit.
What aspects of that part of your journey, you talked about how it shaped you as a man, what about in your professional career?
Yeah, so I would say, some of the cliche but very important skills for sure, such as attention to detail, working collaboratively for one common goal, learning how to adjust on the fly. Obviously, things don't always work out, and I think that's in life in general and probably in any profession, and you have to make adjustments. And so, I think learning that through that experience was huge. But probably the number one word that comes to mind would be balance. And I think, being a student athlete, clearly you have your training schedule, you have games, you're traveling, you also, you have all the normal distractions that everyone has had on college campuses. But at the same time, you're supposed to excel as a student. And so learning early how to balance that was key for me, and something that for sure I use at FanDuel and, along my journey.
Great. You talk about balance, and that brings me right to my next question that I want to just throw to you, Amy, because we talk so much. I'm a mom of 4 kids. You're a mom of 3 boys.
She beat me.
Well, I threw in the twins.
She threw in twins in the end.
So we've got the twin connection as well. But that's a significant balance. You talk about your boys who are wildly successful. These guys are incredible golfers and really wonderful men. So you've done, this is a testament to your parenting and the dedication that you've given to your family life, but that's also a very hard balance and a very public role that you have. So talk about how you go about that balance and what values you are pushing on your boys that are of utmost importance.
Yeah. Well, on the values question and what I'm trying to instill in my boys, just picking up on the theme we were talking about, grit. Honestly, for me, I always joke. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and I say you can't survive in Buffalo if you don't have some grit. Just anyone ever been there for the winter? But I talk about that with my boys all the time, right? Because they're young, right? There was one time in particular where I had just come out of a meeting with our CEO. I have some former colleagues here from Live Nation who know our CEO well, and he's tough. basically routinely get our asses kicked every Monday. And we'd come out of those meetings, and myself and my boss at the time, we'd kind of pick ourselves back up. And that day, my son happened to have a terrible day at school, and I'm on the phone with him, and I'm like, you know what, buddy, that's just how life is. And tomorrow's going to be a better day. Pick yourself up and keep moving. And for many of you, I know there's a lot of students in the audience, and you probably haven't experienced a lot of failure yet in life, and whatever your definition of failure is. And what I would say is the sooner you can figure out how to keep building that muscle, it's really important. On the balance topic, I've reflected on this a lot. I'm going to be 50 in a couple weeks, and so I've had many decades now of working. And for me, I think about balance over a long-term horizon, right? And sometimes it's very easy to get obsessed about, do I have balance within the day or within the week? And the reality is, I early on in my career, which I think many of you are, I consciously chose to invest, right? So you might have looked at me in my 20s and said, I don't really have much balance. For me, I wasn't married, I was traveling all the time, I was in consulting, but I loved it. I was traveling and meeting with Fortune 100 CEOs and getting to see the world. And so you could say I was probably working 70, 80 hours a week. And so was that balanced? I don't know. But for that point in my career, it worked for me. What I would say is that the definition certainly changed when I had my first son. And in fact, there was a moment where I'm like, okay, all of my clients are out of town. I guess that doesn't work that well when you have kids. But your family and how you feel over time are the best barometer for balance. And when I decided to leave consulting after 17 years, because I'd been at Anderson before that, I was like, am I giving up? And I wasn't giving up at all. It was one of those moments where I just knew it was time for me to move on to my next chapter. And you have those times where you're like, things get out of whack, and it's all about how you feel, how your family feels, and then you make those adjustments. And then the final thing I would say is, like, just be kind to yourself, and don't obsess about perfection of balance at any one point in time. You're not going to get it right all the time. Just get it right over the long haul, and do what feels right for you and your family.
Do you, and then also keep an open mind to take in from all parts of the world and all different communities and different ways of life. And that's, again, why we're here. So I want to turn the conversation back to that.
Oh, sorry,
Juliet,
can I just say one more thing, though? Because for the women...
You're the CEO.
For the
Do it, sister. Your stage.
Sorry, I have a lot to say on this topic. The final thing I would say on this particular topic is these are all very personal decisions, and I think it's really important that we don't judge each other. I have chosen not to leave the workforce. I had 3 maternity leaves, so I guess that was I got 4 months off in my entire career. Sorry, 12 if you with all 3. But they're very personal decisions. For me personally, staying in has been, I love to work. I absolutely love what I do. And now that my boys are older, they see that. And there was probably one of the most gratifying moments I've ever had was 2 years ago. I testified in front of Congress on behalf of the ticketing industry. Marla Oster is sitting right there, who now runs Ticketmaster for North America. And I got out of, I survived the congressional hearing. And one of the first texts I got was from at the time, he was 14. And if you have boys, they basically, used to get the one-line text, one word. He wrote me this very long text, and he's like, "Mom, I'm so proud of you," and it went on and on and on. It was like one of those moments where I'm like, there were so many hard years. Thank God I didn't step out. But it's a personal decision. Sorry.
No, that is a
you
whole
can tell me to shut up too if I'm
a whole conversation in itself. That's something we definitely should invest in and do that down the road. Lots more to be said there. But we are here to talk about diversity and lots of different things. And so Juliet, what value do diverse perspectives really bring to a working team from your vantage point?
That's a great question. So I think that, especially when we're looking at an industry that is mostly male-dominated at this time, I think the more diversity you have, and that's not just in skin color or in gender, but also in thinking, we can actually create new products, creative products, and we're going to continue to broaden our audiences, our customer base, And so having those more creative markets, because that's especially what I'm working on, are the actual markets that you're seeing on those sports books, it's just going to help bring in a broader audience. So really on our team, I think we're looking to hire people who have are able to critically think, problem solve, and it doesn't really matter what background you come from. So we find that a lot in PhDs, that you don't have to be a PhD in math, statistics, which is a lot of the work that we do on our team. But in biology, if you kind of have a little bit of coding background, but you're able to think through a problem, you're able to plan from step A to B to C, and then finally your final product, you're going to be successful on our team. I also think that FanDuel, especially my team, and of course I'm biased because I love my team very much, but our team, I had a lot of mentors on our team at FanDuel. So I had never placed a bet before coming to FanDuel. I'm very risk averse, and kind of getting to speak to some of the people on our team that explained the whole betting landscape and how I'm an Eagles fan. They're not like, just don't bet on the Eagles because you're an Eagles fan. That makes no sense, right? You're looking for those you're looking for those great opportunities to bet. And so I've kind of changed a little bit my way of thinking. So some of the skills that I had picked up in my PhD, being a biologist, and I've kind of like tweaked them a little bit so that those same skills can be applied into our field. And I will say that one of my favorite moments so far at FanDuel was I finally did open up an account. We obviously have very strict restrictions. So I did this, of course, through compliant, and it's through a sportsbook we're allowed to bet at. And it took about 10 days for me to get banned from that sports book because I had done so well. And that was like a really huge moment. I was really excited. My whole team was really excited for me because I was using all of these skills that were at my fingertips to actually go out and make a little bit of money from another competitor, which was great.
They shut you down.
Yeah, they shut it down. 10 days. I think I can still bet, but my maximum bet is like $4, so it's not worth it at that point for me anymore. But that was really a really exciting time for me. And again, it's been like a really flawless transition. So I think everybody who has these unique backgrounds, who's never been in sports but have maybe been even a little bit interested in sports, you could definitely have a place either on a sports team or at a company like FanDuel, because we're looking to hire those diverse thinkers that are going to bring something new to our field.
That's a great story. Let's talk about the intersection here of really tech and sports. It's been predominantly homogenous, very much for a long period of time. And Javon, as a person of color, what has your experience been like at the intersection of those two, really?
Yeah, so obviously the gaming industry, I think, has a lot of work to do to become more diverse. But I would say my experience at FanDuel has been very positive. I think at the end of the day, you want the leadership to hopefully share the values that you share, and that you want them to create an environment that welcomes its employees to to be encouraged to speak up about complicated issues that they feel moved to do so, and to challenge processes and decision making. And so I think I've definitely seen that at FanDuel since I've been there over the past year and a half. And for an example, I would say when we launched our product in Virginia last year, we partnered with the Washington football team, now known as the Commanders, but and UNCF, the United Negro College Fund, to donate $1 million to Virginia-based HBCUs. And that went directly to student aid. So each student could get up to $1,000, and it would go to things such as housing, or them getting a new laptop, or whatever they may need. Which is really meaningful for the progression of those individuals. And so I was proud to be a part of that, and extremely happy to see that it was something that our leadership felt strongly that we do.
I want to talk about your past there with the Obama administration. You had an incredible opportunity to work in the administration, travel with President Obama. Looking back on your experiences in conversations that you had with him, and just the way that he had run his office, What did you pull from that in terms of the value of diversity within a team, within an organization, and the role that that plays?
Yeah, so I would say, a big piece of that was, I think he valued his administration to look like the people of the country, and I think, I would hope that every company, would take that on as something of importance for them. I think that's essential for creating a sustainable business long term. I would also say for me, getting a chance to travel all over the world, going to places like Rio de Janeiro or, Amman in Jordan, Seoul in, South Korea, and just seeing different cultures, different people, was really eye-opening for me. And I think that's important to, understand different people's needs, different people's desires, their wants. And I think, I've definitely tried to utilize that in my role, in conversations and negotiations and things of that nature in my current partnerships role here at FanDual.
Now, you also had some opportunities to play some hoops with President Obama, some pickup games. What was
Oh,
that
how
experience
fun.
like? Isn't that awesome?
That is awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, incredible opportunity, obviously, something that my friends and family and I will talk about, for many, many years. I think once you get past kind of seeing, the motorcade outside and walking past a few Secret Service agents to get to the pickup game, I think, for me, it was really, it kind of humanized him. We see him as this historical figure, and rightfully so, being the first African-American president of our country. But I think, seeing him, dive on the floor at times and talk some trash and,
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Did you beat
probably
him?
talk a lot of smack.
Or were you on his team?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. We would rotate. I won't get into who actually won, but yeah, no. I mean, for me, it was seeing him and his passion and competitiveness. It reminded me that he's just like us. He's just like myself, and I think ultimately, people are going to have differences on policies and all, things of that nature. But I think, him reaching that goal and existing. As a president, the first African American president, I think will be his greatest accomplishment because it will, allow all young people, but especially young African American men and women to see, what's possible and to inspire them. And I think that will obviously, live on forever.
And Javon, you just spoke to the dynamics of the Obama administration and him really wanting his staff and to look like America, and everybody had that connectedness. And Amy, we've made great strides at FanDuel in terms of DE&I. There's more work to do. There's always more work to do. What is your hope for where you are going to take DE&I?
Yeah, well, listen, it's as I've said internally and externally, it's a topic I care deeply about. Right, having come from, in fact, I have 3 of my former colleagues, actually 4 in the audience right now. And when I was a Ticketmaster, we grew the top team to 40% women. And as I look at where we are at FanDuel right now, we have a good starting point. Actually, our senior leadership team has a similar representation, but the numbers throughout the organization aren't where I want them to be, right? If you look at overall female population is about 25%, diversity is about a third. And for me, it's not about reporting on vanity metrics. It is a fundamental belief that when you create a more diverse and inclusive environment, it absolutely leads to higher performance, right? I mean, it's very well documented in research. McKinsey did a study not that long ago that shows that companies that get this right are 30% higher performing. And the other thing is that we're seeing it in our current employee base, future employees. If the company isn't committed to it, they'll go somewhere else. And so it's really critical for us to crack this code if we're going to continue to be the most successful online gaming company. I think it starts at the top. It starts with the support. It starts by, I can now, in our entire leadership team, we can create opportunities and advocacy for folks who may not have had that exposure. And, Juliet, I think you said something really important, which is it's not about just diversity based on gender or what skin color and ethnicity you are. It is about diversity of thinking. We were talking yesterday at the Multiplier Summit both companies that I was running and operating roles, I was not hired because I was the expert in ticketing. In fact, Marla will know for very much that I was not the expert in ticketing when I first came in. And same here, I'm not an expert in, very quickly become one in online betting, but they didn't hire me because of that. And I brought a very different perspective. I had run a technology company before, I'd professionalized an organization. I know how to scale, I know how to build really high performing teams. And so I think of the topic of diversity much broader than sometimes we tend to gravitate to.
Because this all goes back to conversations we had. We had conversations at dinner last night.
Yeah.
I came from ESPN. I anchored SportsCenter for years, and someone's like, "Did you know anything about sports betting when you came to FanDuel?"
That's right. She did get that question.
I said, I did our smaller segments on SportsCenter, but back then we called them Las Vegas. It wasn't the Las Vegas lines. We didn't. It was such a taboo topic that you just kind of tiptoed around it, and now we just lean into the space that we're in right now, and it's just the industry is exploding and it's growing, and we're doing it right. It's Responsible Gaming Month this month, but you bring different, these diverse perspectives, and I loved when you brought up, honestly, the thought diversity, because that really is.
She was an
truly
expert in
what-
snails, apparently.
Yeah, snails and the thought.
Snails and sports betting are very similar.
A lot of overlap.
But it's also you're challenging yourself in a new way, which then you're expanding, which only fuels and adds to your team. And so you're all coming together from these very different backgrounds, and it really is, it's a rich experience. Amy, as you look at a broader scope here and the industry as a whole, like how can the industry come together, work together to make progress in regards to DE&I?
Yeah, we talked a lot about this yesterday at the Multiplier Summit, and it's interesting because when we were managing through COVID, and at the time I was still at Live Nation and Ticketmaster, I saw the industry collaborate for, honestly, I think one of the first times, right? We came together, not on this particular topic, but it was all about, okay, when is the industry going to come back, and what are the safety protocols going to be? And we shared information and data and best practices and learnings. And for me, it was actually a moment where you're like, gosh, when an industry can come together on a topic, it can be really powerful. And I believe there's a huge opportunity for us to come together. And I think this conference is a great example of that. Yesterday at this Multiplier Summit, which that one happened to be focused more on supporting women, to be able to see these relatively senior women come together and support each other, and since we're at a data and analytics conference, this was about how you leverage the power of data and analytics to further your career. And if you're not comfortable with it, how do we give you the tools? And what was most inspiring to me is to see how other female leaders, we want to use that platform to do great things in this area. We had a dinner last night with 20 awesome, badass women. And I was looking around the table and I was like, gosh, these are unbelievable executives, and they just happen to be women. But I think the more we can come together, help each other, build our respective packs, be there when you're going to get kicked, fall down and get your ass kicked many times throughout your career. And so supporting each other and creating those advocacy opportunities as an industry can be really powerful.
Absolutely, women supporting women. I'm here for it. And Julia, I want to follow up with you because you are a woman in this space. What's your experience been like? You've been at FanDuel about 1.5 years, but over that course of time, take us into what your world has been like.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like a normal employee at FanDuel, which is good, right? So I've immersed myself in the culture. It doesn't matter that I'm a woman, but I fit in with the group really well. And this is the first time I'm meeting a lot of my team members because I was hired during the pandemic. Fortunately, if you couldn't tell, I'm relatively extroverted, which made it pretty easy to get to know my colleagues through Slack and through Zoom and setting up those one-on-one meetings. But I honestly didn't feel, other than the fact that there aren't a lot of women on our calls, on our big calls, especially when talking with engineers and other data science teams. I don't see a lot of women, but I didn't feel unique or different for being one of the few women on the team. I wanted to bring up also the fact that FanDuel allows us to set up these employee resource groups, and I have joined the group. It's called TWE, or Tech Women Enabling Everyone. And what's so great about this group is we're really working on a multi-pronged approach to kind of increase diversity at FanDual. And one of the ways we're doing that is internally. We're setting up these like internal partnerships. So that means that we're working with leadership and having these honest conversations about how we can increase diversity. Another internal program that we're running is a mentorship program. So how can some of the more veteran women or allies at FanDual start to mentor other women in the company or other allies in the company? We're also working with externally, so we're setting up these external partnerships. So next week I'll be part of a networking event at the University of Georgia to speak to women who are collegiate women who are interested in the field. And I actually take that part very, very seriously, especially as a previous biology professor. Mentoring is very close to my heart. And I think it really needs to happen on all levels, right? Of course, for women in college to see a woman data scientist at FanDual, that's great. But how can I do that at even lower levels, right? Can I get into elementary schools and can I say, hey, you like sports, right? A lot of young kids like sports, right, at that age. They're active. So it's okay to say, hey, you like sports, you like math. You don't have to be a nerd. I mean, you can be a nerd, but you can do that in the sports industry. Like, we're really nerdy here, but we're also really athletic. And there's a nice overlap between those two things. So how can we really do that at all different levels, from really young, middle school, high school, and also obviously for those college kids that are actually starting to start their career, their professional career. And lastly, since we're tech women, we're of course a data-driven group, which is really nice. This is another thing we've worked with leadership on, but we're starting to get those metrics of what the diversity at FanDuel looks like, and how we can actually use those metrics to establish goals within our TWE group, and to make sure that we're actually accomplishing those goals a year or 2 years out. So it's been a really great group to be a part of. And again, it was just like a couple of data scientists and product managers who said, oh, there aren't too many women on our team. Like, let's set up a group. And then boom, the group's set up and we're already, I think, making small strides and hopefully soon bigger strides at the company. So that's been a huge resource.
Can you tell us a little bit more about tech women enabling everyone? And I do love that it's women who are, it's an outreach not just for women, but for everyone, because tech is, I mean, it's a very, it's something that you really have to go into and understand to be able to build out from that. So talk about what the outreach that you've done with that program.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I've been talking about allies. So generally we say allies, they're like men that are interested in promoting and empowering women at the company. So that's generally, when I was using that term allies, that's what that means. And that's why, like we said, we're empowering everyone. We want to make sure that everyone is on board, and we're hiring people that are on board with this increased diversity at FanDuel. So it's important to note, we're not saying men, please don't apply to FanDuel, because that's not at all the case, right? I think FanDuel prides itself on hiring the best candidate, and we don't care what that candidate looks like. But one of the things that we can do, and especially like with this program TWE, is we can try to increase that pool of candidates so that we have a more diverse pool of candidates, so that we can still pick the best candidate, but maybe that candidate is a woman, or maybe that candidate is African American, or maybe that candidate is not, but they're still the best. So I think that that's something that's really important to us. And I think a lot of the university work that we're doing, and Amy, you could probably talk a little bit more about what's going on with our Atlanta office, but again, I have a soft spot for academia and trying to mentor those academics that are looking to start their professional career. So any work I can jump on where it's like a networking thing, I jump at it right away. So that's what we're doing in Georgia next week. And you
Yeah, no, you're, so we literally just this week, we just opened a new tech hub in Atlanta, in Ponce City, which is where a lot of the tech companies are located now. And a big part of that was it's allowing us to diversify our talent pool. So we're partnering up with a lot of the local universities, Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, and by definition, you know, their population just, it skews more diverse, both in terms of people of color and gender. And so we're very excited about that, because we think fundamentally solving this, to your point, you've got to start earlier. And so we've got to expand the aperture and build the pipeline earlier. And this will allow us to do that. The office is beautiful too. So if you like Atlanta, go check it out.
We hired 1,400 people, correct, during COVID. And that office is one that we have filled out entirely with new people, right? And kind of infusing some of our talent that's already been in-house. But how did you kind of go about building out that office? I know you said you partnered with some of the local universities, but how has our team really looked at Atlanta to be a unique experience for us to be a great addition to our product?
Yeah, I think part of it was, well, we did an extensive analysis to try to figure out which city, we should pick, and Atlanta met the criteria for a whole variety of reasons. But a lot of it is making sure we've got the right partnerships at the local level. We're partnered up with the government. We're aligning with the local universities. We were very thoughtful about designing the workspace, right? If you rewind the clock 2 years, most of us were probably in an office 5 days a week, maybe 4 days a week. That's changing. The reality is that this generation now has gotten used to working remotely. We're never going to be a 100% remote environment, but for me to be competitive as a tech company, I've got to reflect the reality of the marketplace. And so even the way the office is set up, right, we need more collaboration spaces and less individual cubicles. So the design of the office is actually very much accommodating the way we're going to work. And the way we're going to work is going to continue to evolve, but I think it's going to be different than what we saw pre-COVID. So a new footprint allows you to do that.
Yeah, the pictures of the space look absolutely amazing. Yeah. I can't wait to get down there. Javon, I want to talk to you about your experiences and your diverse and dynamic background and coming to where you are now. When you look at DE&I and where it is today, what are your hopes for what you're going to see as your career path continues?
Yeah, so I would say, my hope for FanDuel is that, it continues to be kind of in the forefront of our strategy and progression of our company. I think DE&I is, almost similar to fashion in the sense that it's ever evolving. I don't know that there's, certain things that, we can do or put in place that it's like, okay, we're done. I think it's something that you constantly have to kind of evolve with the times and can continuously look at, how you can improve that strategy, to allow your existing employees to, as I talked about earlier, have a voice and allow that to be streamlined up to the ultimate decision makers, but then also, obviously become an attractive place for others to join. And so, clearly Juliet touched on this, hiring is a big part of that, so I would love to see us continuously make progress there, and not just, and as she said, at all levels, but not just at all levels. I would also say, in different types of positions, because I would say historically in our country, in corporate America, that sometimes minorities have been pigeonholed to certain types of positions. So I think, you want to make sure that, there's diverse, in the traditional way we think about it, and, race, gender, ethnicity, but then, as they touched on too, as well as thought, and have that spread out throughout, so that you have those kind of in all conversations, making sure that, kind of no stone is unturned, and that you're ultimately, choosing the best outcome and decision for the company to move forward.
And Juliet, I want to follow up with you. Do you have anything to add to that in regards to what action you hope? We had an opportunity to sit at lunch with Amy yesterday, and Amy asks very pointed questions like, what can leadership do to help you achieve your goals? And just what your response would be to where your hopes are for the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think that visibility is huge. So even having that lunch yesterday where I got to be face-to-face with the CEO of FanDuel, amazing experience. And just, getting that visibility. I think on our last town hall, we had maybe 3 women that were presenting, along with Amy, there were 3 additional women that were presenting on that town hall. So, we're seeing that there is more visibility, and I think that that's really important. And again, that's like at all levels. Like I hope that, and we actually in the NHL analytics panel this morning, one of the gentlemen has 2 daughters. And he said that, I hope that we can continue to see women's sports being pushed, right? So like what can we do at FanDuel to get more visibility on something like women's sports? And yeah, again, for me, the mentorship, anything that I can do to get myself out there to show any woman or any person that kind of thinks a little bit differently, that like you can be at a position like this, I'm more than happy to jump out. So yeah, that's kind of my role where I see myself right at this company. Of course, modeling, doing lots of modeling, data cleaning, but also trying to get myself out there to kind of show people like, yeah, we can have female data scientists that exist.
Yeah. Amy, can you talk to us about our Positive Impact Program, how it relates to women and diversity, of course, and those leadership role opportunities?
Yeah, so this is a program that Flutter, our parent company, just announced this week, and there's really 3 pillars to it. One is about playing well. So we have a target that by the year 2030, 75% of customers globally will use one of our responsible gaming tools. That's a whole topic we can spend another session on. The second one is around working better, and this is really about empowering our colleagues. And one of the targets that we put out there, again, these are global targets, is by 2026, 40% of top positions in the company will be occupied by women. So I will say there's a reinforcement from the top that we care about this. We're setting targets that are very public. And, both of you said it, so it starts with shining a light on the data. And even if we don't love our starting point, we at least know what the starting point is, and so that we can make measured progress against that. But I can tell you, as somebody who's running one of the largest divisions within Flutter, this is a topic that that the entire management team is committed to. And when you put a target out like that out there, that's very public, yeah, we're going to figure out how to hit it.
It's an optimistic, and
Yeah.
It's certainly a goal that's attainable, and it's
Yeah.
so nice to see our leadership at the very top put it out there and really be passionate about it as well in the way that Peter Jackson talks about it. Why is it so important to get this right? Obviously, you can put different metrics to it and whatnot, but from your perspective, why is it so important?
Well, I mean, I think we talked about some of it in the sense that I know it, I saw it when, I keep pointing to my ladies over there from Ticketmaster. I'll embarrass Kat Frederick for a minute. When Kat came into the organization, I said to her, I was like, what do you want to do? We have so many things that you could do. I think we made up some silly title for her. And, I was able to bring these just general athletes into the organization that happened to be diverse candidates. And what I saw and what I'm seeing and what we're doing is when we get this right, yes, it drives higher performance, but it also leads to a much more engaged organization, right? We talk a lot about managing the performance and the health of the organization. And I will say, especially having come out of consulting where I used to tell clients what to do, if you don't get the health side of the equation right, there's no way you're going to get the performance side. And so, that engagement is absolutely stronger when you get this right. And we have a hell of a lot of fun, right? I mean, I always say life is, let's not take ourselves too seriously. We're not solving world peace. But when you get that, kind of the right diversity of thought together with the right people who are competitive and passionate about winning, it leads to superior business results, but it's really a lot of fun too. So for me, I don't want to be in an organization where I don't love coming into work every day and I'm not inspired and pushed by the people around me, and that's what I think we've been able to do collectively as leadership teams. So.
We do have about 10 minutes left, so I just want to make sure if anyone has questions, I hope you're not sitting there waiting. Are there any questions? Because again, we have 2 runners with microphones. Love it, right up front.
It's like an auction.
Right, and you, and anybody else.
Thank you for taking my question. So you guys touched on the area of recruitment in DEI, and I was just curious to hear what role you think business development has in DEI, and what checks and balances, processes you have in place to ensure that the folks you're doing business with, the partnerships you're conducting, are continuing to help instill that DEI strategy, that core value, and how you measure that over time.
I'll start, and then Javon, I think you should pile in as well. So in FanDual, we have a DE&I council, and a couple of the pillars are about exactly that, right? So we have, as you can imagine, we partner up with the biggest leagues and the teams of the world, and so there's, Javon mentioned one of the examples, but a big part of that dialogue is how do we partner, not just for business reasons, of course. I write a big check to the NFL because they help me drive acquisition, but it's also about partnering up on these types of topics. The other area is around marketing. We want to make sure that, if you rewind the clock years ago, the marketing wasn't particularly diverse for the industry, and so we're thinking much more about that and how do we represent the country, right? The diversity in the population. How do we partner up with vendors that also may be diverse? And I would say philosophically, there's companies. Bohan is here somewhere, but we just partnered up with, with Buzzer, his organization, and he's also a leader that cares deeply about this topic. So there's lots of different ways that we're trying to do that through the business channels as well. So I don't know, Jovan, if you want to.
Yeah, no. Amy touched on a lot of it. I would say she spoke about the DE&I Council. I serve on that council, mainly focusing on how we can better implement that into our team and league partnerships. And so we're still in the process of getting that right and doing that more and more. Obviously I gave the example that we did with the Washington football team, but I think there's a lot of room for growth, and naturally, teams, most of the professional teams are tuned in to what their local communities need. We may not always know when we're entering a new market what a community may need most, and so I think we'll lean on some of those teams and partnerships to help us get that right. And I know that it's something that we definitely want to see happen and do more of.
Do we have more questions?
Right
Great.
behind.
Hi, guys. Thank you for sharing your respective stories. It's been really cool hearing about your transitions. I'm curious to hear about any ideals that you guys have developed throughout your transition and throughout the years that have allowed you guys to be successful in, your current careers, and, how you guys have applied that to, roles that you've kind of stepped into without having prior knowledge.
So ideas, so how we've been successful, I just want to make sure I understand the question.
The mask makes it hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the mask.
Mask, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Some ideals that you developed throughout the years to allow you to be successful in your, current career and transitions.
Got it. Do either of you want to start? Or you want me to?
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, I'll start.
Go for it.
I think having some confidence is definitely, like, being confident in the decisions that you make, being confident in the decisions that you're about to make, right? If you're leaping from one career to another career, just being confident about that transition. I think that's definitely helped propel me to the success that the small successes I've seen at FanDuel. And it takes a team, right? One of the first questions that Lisa asked us was like, who are your mentors? And I think it's really helpful if you have people around you that are talking you up, that are making you feel good. And also your team members. So like if you're moving to a different team or you're moving to a different company, you want to make sure that you're going to be supported by, of course, the higher ups, but also like your direct coworkers. And I've definitely found that on my team, so that's helped with my confidence. And as someone that was very new to specifically sports modeling, right, getting to have these like one-on-one think tank sessions over Zoom helped me build my confidence. And when someone say, Juliet, that's a really good idea, I didn't think about that. That was really helpful. Or if somebody presented a good idea to me, right, kind of just they're not criticizing my model, they're trying to help me with my model. I'm going to take that criticism to heart. I'm going to make my model better, and I'm going to become more confident in my model. So that's definitely, I think, confidence, self-confidence has been hugely helpful for me.
Yeah, I could weigh in too. For me, my time, with the president and with the former mayor, I was able to meet so many different people from all walks of life. So constituents, business titans, cultural leaders, celebrities, you name it. I've had tons of conversations with tons of different types of people, and I've always tried to make an emphasis on listening more than talking, and I think that's when you really get to learn about different people's stories, and I think it's been extremely beneficial for me in my partnerships role, in our negotiations and conversations through that lens of just understanding a very diverse group of people.
The last thing I would say, one of the criteria that I always look for when I'm recruiting people is comfort with ambiguity, which if the last 2 years has taught us anything, it's taught us that we don't really have a lot of control over certain things. And so people who are comfortable stepping into a very ambiguous environment, right, that don't need to be told what to do, that can see the opportunity in the white space, but also I hire a lot of people where I don't have the perfect job description, as I just said, and sometimes, people are very uncomfortable with that. If you can figure out how to not just, be comfortable with ambiguity, but embrace and thrive on it, I think that is by far one of the most important criteria.
Opportunities are certainly born from that as well. Do we have any other questions? One right up front.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, right.
So hard to see him.
I think we have time for one more
Front row,
question.
yeah. One more question here.
I just want to thank you all so much. I've worked in pro sports my whole career, and for a lot of people, FanDuel is the goal. Like, I've had friends that have joined after working in for pro sports teams, and their lives are like much improved. So thank you for what you do for their lives in the community and the culture. But I think it's important also to say that change sometimes isn't always it doesn't come fast enough. Well, it never usually does. Do you have any tips on not getting frustrated, contributing to the company culture in a positive way, even if you're not in a leadership role, finding allies? Any suggestions on improving culture from where you are?
I'll take, as someone that's
go
not in
for
a
it.
leadership role, I can take that question. I think kind of understanding the small steps that you can take to make small changes, because those small changes can eventually snowball into bigger changes. And that's kind of what we're seeing with this group TWE. Originally, and I think I have a TWE member in the back somewhere over there, hey Jess. And like originally it was venting, we would just vent about stuff that we would just get on, and this stage.
Leadership is terrible.
That's before Amy started as CEO. No, I'm just kidding. But we could just vent about things, and then it kind of just snowballed, and then we found out, we can actually set up a group. Leadership's actually talking to us, and they're asking our opinion now. Wow, we can actually help with hiring, and we can do some networking. So it kind of all just snowballed from a group of women that were a little frustrated that we didn't see a lot of other women around the company. So I think that that's really important, finding out the small things that you can do that may or may not take off, but at least it will help with some of your frustrations at the time, especially if you find that common denominator to complain about, right? Always helps to vent a little bit.
Well, and I will say, I think we're going to make the most success when these things are grassroots, right? I'm constantly asking, I've gone back to former employees and asked, what can we as an industry do to support you? What can I as within my own organization? And I think sometimes if you're sitting there and you're new to the organization or you're junior, you think, gosh, I don't want to bother this leader or that leader because they're so busy. The reality is I actually want to hear it. We have to hear it as a leadership team. And sometimes you do get disconnected from the entry levels in the organization. So I'd encourage you to, if you have ideas, make sure that you share them with the right people in the organization.
You know your value. You know what you bring to the table. As Juliet said, have that self-confidence, because thought diversity is very important to positive growth within the company and in the community as well. Do we have any? I think that's kind of a good one to end on. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Javon, thank you. Juliet, Amy, thank you so much for your perspective, your insights, your stories. Transition's not always easy, but there's a success story on the other side. So I hope you all take a little bit of something from our panel today. Again, thanks for being here. And thank you to MIT Sloan for the opportunity to have this very important conversation.
Thank
Enjoy
you,
the rest
Lisa.
of your day.